This video is brought to you in part by our channel members. You can also become a member by clicking the first link in the description. Don't pick up hitchhikers. I was going to post this in r/creepy encounters, but I think it may tread on the line with this group, so here I am. I, a 52-year-old female at the time, was traveling by car to an out-of-town job assignment. I had stopped at a popular and busy gas station to fill up the car, stretch my legs, use the restroom, and grab a snack. I was approached by a developmentally disabled woman who appeared to be in her mid-20s. She was looking for a ride to a town a couple of towns over. Her ride had abandoned her while she was in the restroom. She was a little upset. She didn't have a cell phone and didn't know any phone numbers so I could call someone for her. I checked with the employees at the store, and they said that she had been there for an hour looking for a ride because she said her friends left her while she was in the restroom. I then made the decision to do something I've never done before and offer a stranger a ride. I wasn't going to the town she wanted to go, but I was heading in that direction and told her I could drop her off at the grocery store in the next town where I would be turning off to go to my destination. The grocery store was always busy, and it was very likely she'd have an easier time getting a ride to where she wanted to go. Also, she'd be 5 miles away from where she wanted to go instead of 25 miles, and she'd have an easier time walking that distance if she had to. This was agreeable to her, and we set off. Right away, I noticed a van following us. I tried to lose the van, but it kept pace. Meanwhile, the woman wanted to play with my phone. I told her no, it wasn't a toy, it was for work, and I moved it out of her reach. The van speeds up and starts to get closer. The woman suddenly remembers her boyfriend's phone number, and we need to call him. I can't use my phone while driving, and I was approaching the outskirts of the business district of the next town, so no cell phone use while driving signs everywhere. I told her, "We're almost to the grocery store. We can call him from the parking lot." She then becomes agitated and yells, "No, you have to take me home." I told you I can't do that. I'm not going there. It's in the opposite direction of where I need to go, and I'm expected soon. We'll call him from the parking lot. She becomes more upset and frustrated, and the van is getting closer. I pull into the grocery store parking lot. It's about 4 p.m., and the grocery store is busy. I pull up in front of the store and ask for her boyfriend's number, and she can't remember it. She won't get out of the car, she's arguing with me, and the van is pulling into the parking lot. There is a sheriff's deputy parked nearby, so I roll my window down and signal that I need to speak to him. He walks over and asks me what's going on. I tell him I met the woman, and now she won't get out of the car, and under my breath, I tell him the van has been following us. The deputy tells the woman, "She brought you where you asked her to. It's time for you to leave her car now." She slowly gets out of the car, and I ask once more for her boyfriend's number. Then she says, "You're crazy. I don't have a boyfriend. Oh look, there are my friends now." And she points to the damn van. The deputy and I share a look, and he says, "Give me your contact info. I can delay them for about 20 minutes while I check their license and registration and lecture them about abandoning a special needs adult. You get out of here, and I'll check on you before my shift is over. And don't pick up any more hitchhikers." I left and went on to my destination. He called me to make sure I got to where I was going and told me that they were keeping an eye on the van and its owner. He told me he also contacted a colleague at the sheriff's department in the county where I was working, and that she would contact me in a day or two. While I was on assignment there, I spoke to 2 deputies and a detective about the woman in the van. No one ever told me anything about them, but they were very interested in them. My nightmare is, one day, I'll turn on a true crime show and see a report about this woman and her gang robbing and killing someone. So, woman looking for a ride at the travel stop, let's not meet again. Creepy woman followed me around laughing at water park. This happened back when I was 11 or 12 years old. It was the beginning of summer, and I begged my mom to go to the water park in the next town. She couldn't drive, so she arranged for her friend to drop me off and pick me back up after. I was a decent swimmer and had been alone a couple of times before. My mom had given me the money for the admission and a little extra to get a drink and snack from the vending machines. I arrived and got changed, putting my bag in a locker and strapping the key around my ankle. I couldn't wait to get on the slides. There weren't too many people there, as it was early evening around 6 p.m., so I got on all the rides relatively quickly. My favorite was the River Rapids slide, On this slide, you would go down small sections of the slide, splashing into small pools in between. You were supposed to use a rubber ring, but most kids, and some adults, didn't bother. No one ever worked on the slides anyway, so it was a bit of a free-for-all. I went down the river rapid slide for the 4th or 5th time, and splashed into the first pool. I mucked around here for a bit before wading towards the next section of the slide, and I was completely alone on the slide, or so I thought. The next pool after this section of the slide was a dark and enclosed section. I liked to sit in there sometimes and relax before finishing the ride. However, this time, someone was already in there. A larger woman in her 30s or 40s lay on her stomach with her feet over the last section of the slide. Her head peeking above the water, she was cackling loudly, a hysterical guttural laugh. She looked me dead in the eyes and pushed herself down the last section of slide, still laughing as it echoed off the slide walls. I was thoroughly freaked out and waited 5 minutes before sliding down so I didn't encounter her at the bottom. Presuming it was a random freaky coincidence, I went straight back on the slide. Again, no one else was around. I rode the first section normally, before apprehensively sliding to the second section, into the dark cave pool, and I heard it again. That creepy, genuinely hysterical laughter. There she was, the same woman from before, grinning and laughing while staring at me. She again flushed herself down the slide, leaving me alone. I decided I wasn't going to ride the river rapid slide again that visit. She petrified me. So I decided to go to the black hole next. It was a one-person slide. You're supposed to wait for the light to go green before sliding, so I figured I would be okay. I say supposed. I flung myself into the dark abyss of the tube ride. However, I heard a second thud behind me. I turned around, and in the darkness, my worst fears came true. I saw the shadowy figure of an overweight middle-aged woman following me down the slide, and once again, she started laughing loudly and hard, the kind of laugh where you can barely pause for breath, as if you've seen the funniest show or meme you could imagine. I had never been more terrified in my life. I panicked, slamming my hands down on the floor of the slide and pushing in an attempt to make myself go faster. It worked a little, but she was never far behind, cackling away. When I reached the bottom, I threw myself out of the landing strip area, grazing my knee. I ran to the changing rooms, not looking back. I locked myself in a stall and removed the key from my ankle before running out to grab my stuff, and went straight back in. I then got changed and bolted from the building to call my mom. She sent her friend to pick me up right away. So, creepy laughing water park lady, let's not meet again. A creepy bicycle man in the fields. This story happened a while ago, but it still messes with my mind. Side note, I live in a quiet countryside, where usually nothing happens. I'm an 18-year-old girl who can easily walk around my hometown alone without ever being scared, because it's really safe here. Basically no crimes. So as usual, me and my dog went for a walk one evening. It was nice weather outside, so I decided to go to a nearby field. I usually let my dog out of her leash there, so it was fun for both of us. She's a nice dog, and always comes when I call for her. We get to the field and everything is going really well, and nothing seems off. Except I kinda have this odd feeling in my gut that I never usually have. The last time I had the same feeling was when I was 8 years old, and we were driving at night with my family. I had the same feeling then, and I told it to my parents. I feel like something is wrong. You should be careful. I said something like that. They slowed down because I was oddly serious at the moment. A minute after I said it, a deer came out of nowhere, and we would have crashed if we had gone by the same speed as a minute before. We were all shocked, and my mom thanked me. I still remember it like it was yesterday. However, in the field, 10 years later, I get the same gut feeling. Whatever. I think and keep going, completely ignoring it. We roll around the fields in a nearby forest until the sun starts to set. I put my dog back on her leash and decide to leave from one of the tiny paths that go through a small forest. It's not a popular way to go, but it's quick. As I'm walking along that path, I suddenly spot a silhouette in the end of the road, just before the forest starts. I think nothing of it at that point, and just keep walking. But after just a little while, I have a strong gut feeling and stare at the silhouette for a while. It's then that I notice that the silhouette is staring at me without moving. I just think that maybe they were waiting for someone, because at first, the silhouette still looked like a child's. But as I got closer, I noticed that it wasn't a child, but a grown man who was difficultly riding a child's bicycle. It was a blue and green boy's bicycle. His legs were way too long for it, and his whole body looked like he was forcing himself to ride it. It was a really unsettling sight. Still, my dumbass didn't want to turn around and have a couple of kilometers wasted time. So, even though it was creepy looking, I thought, maybe he's waiting for someone that comes from my way, but every step I take, he follows me with intense expression. I'm only like 20 meters away from him when he starts to do weird jumps on his bike, smiling the ugliest and most unsettling smile I've ever seen, just staring at me with wide eyes. He kinda looks like he was expecting something, and is so excited about it that he needs to jump. He looks like he's in his 50s or something, very long and thin legs and arms, bald, and that creepy unsettling smile. That's when my alarm bells went off. I glanced behind me, and no one was there. It was just me, an 18-year-old small girl with her fluffy and definitely not guard dog. I turn around and start to jog where I came from, just in case. I glanced at him in sight in relief when I noticed he wasn't following me or anything. I thought that maybe he wasn't waiting for me after all, and called myself stupid and a scaredy cat. Well, I was so wrong. My adrenaline starts to slow down again as I'm in the middle of the fields, and I still see no sign of him following me. I let my dog off her leash again, and she starts to run around. I'm nearly at the end of the field when my dog spots a rabbit or deer or some interesting thing and flies towards it. I panic because she has never done that before and yell for her. I yell plenty of times for her loudly, and she finally comes back. I'm relieved that nothing happened to her, but as I put her back on her leash, I notice something from the corner of my eye. The freaking bald long legs is biking towards me. He's not looking at the ground when he bikes, but me. Freaking out wasn't enough to express my feeling in that moment. I have never seen a human who looks so crazy. More than crazy. What surprised me the most was that he was biking through a field, and I can tell you, it's not an easy field to even walk sometimes. It has muddy ponds that you need to jump over, but that psycho just biked through them. He was struggling a lot to bike there, but somehow still managed to do it. I didn't watch for another second behind me because I started running. I ran so fast that I saw black and nearly collapsed. My lungs hurt so bad that I thought I was dying, but the adrenaline kept my blood running in my legs too. Once I glanced behind me and he was there, struggling badly to keep up his full speed on the field grounds, with that ugly white smile, and the way too little bike. After that, I just ran like crazy until I found a house, and hid in their yard without even minding that I was in someone else's yard. It didn't matter to me in that moment at all. I waited a while with my breathing stuck in my throat, but he didn't come. I was planning to yell as loudly as I could if he found me, but he never did. At some point, the adrenaline started leaving my system, and I left my hiding spot. I ran again until I reached an area which had multiple people in their yards, so I would have help if I saw him again, but I didn't. I typed 911 into my phone, but couldn't bring myself to call, mostly because I had no proof, and didn't want my parents to find out because they are overprotective, so I probably wouldn't leave my house anymore. I've been paranoid after this incident. My dog was frightened too. I guess she noticed something was really off as well. I swear to God that I will always listen to my gut when it's telling me something from now on. I'm still scared of him. I've expected to randomly spot him in some area and think about what he could have done to me. I can't forget his awful smile. I feel like he's going to jump in my window one night and do what he wants to me. I feel paranoid and helpless, and still thinking about calling the police. The Last Tram. This happened years ago, when I was a dumb teen who loved walking the city alone after dark. This took place in Eastern Europe, for context, in a city with a tramway system. On this one night, I sat in a tram station, waiting to catch the last tram home. 3 trams stopped at this station, 2 of which went where I was going. Important info for later. It was around 10 p.m., and I sat there waiting, lost in thought. I barely registered a man quietly walking up and standing by the shelter. I thought nothing of it, just someone else waiting for the tram, until I started feeling weird. The streets were quiet and dark, and there was no one else in sight, just me and this guy, and I started wondering why he chose to stand this close to me when he had so much space to avoid dealing with people. I couldn't comprehend anyone wanting to socialize this late at night, given that I was not very social myself. So I glanced at him, trying not to overthink it. He was a bald-headed, beady-eyed giant, tall and built like a bear, big belly, and big arms and legs. I was 5'2" and scrawny, but that wasn't what scared me. It was the fact that he was staring right at me, unblinking and expressionless, not even attempting to look away or act embarrassed. No, this guy wanted me to feel uncomfortable. I instantly felt weak and shaky, cold shivers down my spine. This was not normal. I realized quickly that I was not in a good situation. I couldn't miss the last tram. Walking home was out of the question, and my phone was almost dead. I was a shy kid and didn't have what it takes to scare this guy away. I knew that, but I had to at least try. I only managed to utter out a small "hi," trying my best to startle him out of whatever he was thinking. But my attempt failed in the face of his silent, threatening aura. He kept staring, no sign of intent to reply. He was enjoying this. Feeling the panic rising inside me, I told myself to stay calm and think rationally. Maybe he didn't hear me. Minutes passed. His stare continued to burn on my skin, and there was no tram in sight. Ignoring him didn't work, so I mustered the courage to speak once again, this time louder. "What do you want? Stop staring." No answer. He definitely heard me this time. I felt myself start to get angry. I didn't want to let this guy get to me anymore. I didn't want to continue to give him the satisfaction of watching me squirm nervously and pretend that his behavior didn't bother me. I took a deep breath and forced myself to start thinking. I knew what I can't do. I can't fight him off if he makes a move, and there's nothing I can say or do that will get him to stop. I don't know what his intentions were, but I knew they weren't good. If I tried to walk away, he would probably follow. I could run, but he would most likely catch up to me before I can tire him out, since his legs were much longer than mine. Even if I managed to somehow lose him, walking home through dark alleys, past the junkies and gypsies that are always sprawling about, could land me in an even worse situation. I could pretend to call someone, but he might feel compelled to act much sooner if he felt threatened. So, what can I do? The only thing I could realistically be able to do was to try to outsmart him somehow. So I started developing a few plans, depending on which trams showed up, trying to confirm whether he was just amusing himself and actually waiting for a tram too, or popped over for other, more suspicious reasons, and whether I could get any kind of help. I couldn't let him see where I lived, so if he followed me, I'd have to be prepared to employ whatever strategy available, and for that, I needed to stay rational and aware of my surroundings. While I was still thinking, the first tram showed up. It was one I could have taken home, but this one pulled into the depot right next to my neighborhood, forcing me to lead him to my home. I hoped he would board it and leave me be, but he didn't. He kept watching me carefully. I let the tram go, desperately hoping that it wasn't the last one to head home. He continued to watch, and I sensed that he wasn't quite happy with how things were going. I put up with it for another 15 minutes, trying to focus on another plan of action. I could now pretend that I needed the other tram, the one going to a different area of the city, and just ride to the next station, getting off as soon as possible so I don't end up too far and miss the tram I need. This tram showed up next. With my heart in my throat, I boarded it and sat down by the door. He got on it too, but sat himself in the back, pretty far from where I was. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking this might still go well. When the tram reached the next station, I got up and out, not looking back and hoping it was all over. But when I stepped on the pavement and watched the tram drive away, I couldn't see him in it. I turned my head slowly and was terrified to see him walking towards me, looking slightly pissed off. He stopped just a few steps away from me and resumed staring, this time with a clear hint of malice, still in silence. My vision blurred as I fought back tears of despair. He was not going to let me go. The helplessness I felt was unbearable, but I couldn't cry. I couldn't give up. I had to find a way. I had to get home tonight. The prospect of what might happen to me any time now if I didn't was becoming too real. My head was full of unanswered questions, regret, and horrible scenarios. I wanted so badly to not have to think anymore, to not have to fight back tears and stay composed, but I knew this would be his cue to enact whatever fucked up plan he had in mind. I couldn't let that happen. Then, I saw the final tram approach, the only one I could take now, and got on as quickly as my trembling legs would allow me to. When I was in, bright lights enveloped me. My mind snapped out of the nightmarish spiral of fear and allowed me a moment of clarity. I had 3 stops to figure this out. I sat down at the front and looked at the driver. He was a frail old man, blissfully unaware of my distress. Getting the driver's attention was a no-go. We passed one stop. There was no one else waiting to climb aboard. I turned around fully expecting to see that the psycho had followed me again, but I did not expect him to be sitting right behind me. He was not taking any chances. He was making sure I won't try anything like last time. I shot him a hateful glare and allowed my anger to overcome my fear. I stood up and purposefully walked over to another seat in the middle of the tram car. I wanted to make it clear I will not put up with his BS any longer, but he got up too and slowly walked up to a spot 2 seats behind and diagonally from me. Then sat down with the tiniest arrogant grin on his face. Already expecting it, I shot up and stood by the middle of the door instead, determined to keep him on his toes. If I stood right by the door, he won't have any idea which station I planned to get off at. He remained where he was this time, convinced that I was bluffing. After all, this was really the last tram. There was nothing else I could possibly do to escape now. He must have reckoned, so my defiance was just a funny act to him. This was my chance. I had to take the risk. It had to work. There were 3 doors on the tram, and they all opened and closed at the same time, and stayed open for around 5 seconds before closing again if no buttons were pressed, or people detected on the threshold. The next stop, the only one left before mine, came into view. The tram then slowed to a stop. The doors opened, and I made no move. 5 long seconds passed, and the door started to close. I bolted out and ran for it, reaching the back doors as fast as I could, and slamming the button to open it again. My whole body was tense with adrenaline. I waited a long, painful second and jumped back in, keeping my head low, holding my breath, and crouching behind the nearest seat. I shut my eyes tightly and exhaled slowly, while thanking the gods I didn't believe in for that button working, and wishing with all my might for him to not have seen me before I got back in. As I was waiting to hear his footsteps approaching, I pictured him frantically looking for me. Was he still on the tram? Face screwed up in anger? Head turning like a fat, ugly meerkat? Or was he catching his breath on the pavement of the last station, mad eyes searching the darkness for me? As the tram continued its loud journey, banging and clanging in sync with my heartbeat, I dared smile to myself, imagining his face when he realized he fucked up. Hand to my chest, I did my best to stealthily look around the corner, and found no one looking back. I stood up in excitement and threw myself at the foggy back window, and there he was, standing alone and victimless on that slowly fading out of sight station, watching me leave him and his vile plans behind. Giving someone the middle finger never felt so good. I made it home and told no one my story, for fear I'd be admonished for my naivety. But I was safe. I was proud of myself, and I learned my lesson. Creepy stranger, I hope the events of that day taught you to not underestimate girls, and prevented you from becoming a criminal for the rest of your life. Let's never meet again. The lady at my door. Back when I lived in the rural Midwest, I lived in a house right off of the highway. My house was right between one town and another, almost right on the county line. Our house had a big circle driveway. If you drove in the driveway, you would be going straight towards our barn. If you curved right, you could pull into our garage. If you went past the garage, you could circle around in front of the house and pull back out where you started. Our house had 2 large double doors in the front, which we rarely used. We always used the door that was inside the garage. One night, it was very late, and my doorbell rang. My husband, my 3-year-old daughter, and I were all asleep. It woke me up, and I thought I was maybe dreaming. But it rang again. I woke my husband up. He thought I was hearing things, until it rang again. It was very dark outside, but we have a dusk to dawn light, so most of the driveway is pretty lit up. Unfortunately, you can't really see out the front doors unless you open the door and look out. You can open just one at a time, or you can open both of them by using 2 latch-like things that are at the top and the bottom of one of the doors. My husband gets up and I follow him. He decides he is going to open the door. I want to call the cops, but because we live on the county line, we know it's going to be a while before they can get there. He opens the door to a girl, maybe early 20s. She looks normal except for the fact that she's been standing at my door in the middle of the night. I look past her and her car is pulled into my driveway, just off the road. Not up to the house, not around the circle. She says she needs to use the phone. She says her car battery died or something. She's not sure, but she can't get it to start. I told my husband, no fucking way. This is how horror movies start, and we offered to call the cops. She asks over and over, but I am not letting her in. We tell her we will call, and she kind of stomps off. We watch her walk back to her car, that's maybe 50 feet away. I can see her car, I can see her, so I call the cops. They say they will be there as soon as they can, about 15 minutes. They don't sound very concerned at this point, and I'm not either. I mean, It's just a girl. She probably does have a dead battery. She opens the trunk, and no lights come on. She rummages around in the trunk. Then, the driver's side door opens, and out steps a guy. Then, the back passenger door opens, and out steps one more guy. They all rummage around the trunk, with no lights on. I can't hear anything. I can't hear them talking, and I can't tell what they're doing. Then, they all get back in the car. Now at this point, maybe 5 minutes have gone by, and I am silently praying that the sheriff put his foot on the gas and gets here quick. But I know it's going to be another 10 minutes or so. They just sit there, in the car, lights off and not moving. I can't see them when they're in the car, but I know they're in there. I know they didn't get out of the car and walk past the house, because they would have had to walk right under the dusk to dawn light. I would have seen them. I think I see the driver light a smoke. That part, I'm not sure about. Then, I see something. Someone, walking towards the car from the right, coming from the direction of the barn. It's a man. I have no idea who this man is. We don't have a neighbor for at least a mile, and he's coming from the back of my property, which ends in a creek. He walks under the dusk to dawn light straight to the car, and he doesn't look at the house. He just walks to the car and gets in the back. Then, the car starts up, and they slowly back out of my driveway and head north. The cops arrive about 10 minutes later, and at this point, I am freaking out. They search around but can't find anything. They ask us if we got a license plate, but they were parked too far away. Then, tell us to call if they come back. My husband goes and gets his shotgun from the shop, and we try to go back to sleep. They never came back. I don't know who those people were, and I don't know what they wanted. Creepy people in the car without a dead battery. Let's never, ever meet again. Leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. Thanks for watching.